the world we live in feels safe until the moment you wake up and can't move. These are stories of sleep paralysis. Subscribe and hit the like button.
The walls of my apartment have always been a little rough. An old house, old plaster, stains that could never be completely washed away. It was as if the house had its own breath, slow, deep, patient. That night, the air seemed thicker. Not damp, just thicker, as if it were hanging between my fingers when I walked past the wall. I sat by the table lamp reading a book, but I couldn't concentrate. It seemed as if the apartment was listening to me, as if the whole space had frozen and was waiting. I put down my cup, turned off the lamp, and went to the bedroom. The darkness was soft and calm. I lay down, feeling the warmth of the blanket and the slow rhythm of my own breathing. I was almost asleep when I heard drip, drip, drip. At first, I thought it was the faucet in the kitchen. I wanted to get up, but my body wouldn't obey me. Paralysis covered me like a wet blanket, heavy and sudden. The smell came after the silence, thick, metallic, like the smell of old iron dipped in water. I opened my eyes. A black liquid was flowing down the wall opposite the bed. Thick, viscous, glossy like oil. It wasn't just flowing. It was moving, bending around uneven surfaces, joining together in streams and slowly creeping down, leaving long, dark furrows. Drip, drip, drip. With each drop, the smell grew stronger. And then a voice came from the wall. Vet, hoarse, as if the words were sticking together in a mouth filled with liquid. You are finally looking. The liquid on the wall slid lower and lower. A silhouette began to emerge from the dark streams. At first it was vague, but gradually it took shape. The contours of shoulders, a chest, a long, elongated silhouette sliding down like a shadow that had lost its support. The voice continued. I was looking for the easiest place to break through, where it was thinner, where I could slip through. The liquid gathered in a dark puddle near the floor. Then it rose upward. Drops of black mass joined together to form a hand. The fingers were made of layers of thick mucus, each movement accompanied by a sloshing sound. You won't escape, said the voice, now closer. I've been running for many years. From the depths, from below, from the darkness behind the walls. The silhouette on the wall smiled with an empty void instead of a mouth. New streaks of black liquid flowed from it. Your house lets me in. So do you. The hand touched the edge of the mattress. A cold, sticky touch hit my leg. I tried to scream, but paralysis held me like a vice. The fingers rose higher, leaving wet marks on the fabric. The black mass descended from the wall in a long, heavy stream, dividing and merging again like a living substance. Let me out, whispered the liquid. I've waited so long. I want warmth. I want air. I want you. Suddenly, a new crack appeared in the silhouette. Fresh, vet. An even thicker stream of black resin spurted from it, splashing down the wall as if someone had overturned a bucket. This stream fell to the floor next to my face. A second later, I felt something touch my cheek. Impossibly cold to the touch. Sticky, slippery. The liquid slowly rose up my neck, sloshing with every centimeter. The silhouette on the wall leaned forward. Empty eyes from the darkness were directly opposite mine. A little more, the voice became low, multi-voiced. I'm already in your warmth. Your skin cracked. I'll come in. A second stream of liquid from the crack fell directly onto the pillow. It splashed onto my lips. My tongue tasted raw earth, metal, and something rotten. The black mass rose on my chest. Slowly, unhurriedly. The fingers of the dark hand were already touching my throat. The voice whispered so low that the wall beneath it vibrated. You're cracked. I'm already inside you. The fingers tightened. I felt them blocking my breath. A black wave covered my head, cold spread through my lungs. I was suffocating, unable to move. And then, somewhere deep inside me, in my chest, something suddenly tightened, like a string that finally snapped. I inhaled, roughly, painfully. The blood returned to my fingertips. The paralysis flew out of my body like torn skin. I jerked to the side, fell out of bed, hit my shoulder on the nightstand, but managed to turn on the light. In an instant, everything disappeared. The wall was dry. The floor was clean. No liquid. Only one trace remained. A wide, long black streak, still wet, running from the ceiling to the baseboard. It had clear grooves, as if someone had run their six-jointed fingers along it. And at the very bottom, where the mass fell as the last drop, there was writing on the wall. Still, the word did not dry out for a long time. It seemed to be breathing. I wanted to walk away, but I heard it coming from the wall, not from a crack, but from deep within the concrete. Drip, 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 as if something was still dripping. Only now, from the other side of the wall. In the evening, I sat at the table for a long time, sorting through old folders. Not because of work, I just wanted to finally throw away everything unnecessary and clear the space around me. Outside the window, a light drizzle rustled. The lamp glowed with a subdued yellow light, and this soft semi-darkness felt almost homely. The air was dry, warm, but several times I caught a faint, barely perceptible smell of smoke. Or so it seemed to me. I went to the window, closed it, returned to the table. The smell was gone. Probably the neighbors were smoking. I thought quietly and turned off the lamp. Before going to sleep, I just laid down and stared at the ceiling for a while. It looked familiar, white, smooth, with a small scratch in the corner that had been there for 5 years, but I had never noticed it. My eyes slowly closed, my thoughts softened, and I felt sleep coming smoothly, without resistance, like warm water rising to my shoulders. I was sinking, and at that moment, something light touched my cheek. Not an insect, not air, something dry. I opened my eyes, but my body was immobile. Paralysis came over me suddenly and heavily. A second speck of dust fell on my face, then a third, and I saw ash beginning to fall from the ceiling. At first, it was just a few grains. Then it became a thin, steady stream. There was almost no sound, just a quiet SH when it touched the blanket in my eyelids, lips, neck. The ceiling was getting darker. A spot appeared in the center that hadn't been there before. It was getting bigger. It was pulsating. A voice came from there. Quiet, hoarse, as if spoken through a thick layer of hot ash. Don't breathe, you're bringing it back. I tried to hold my breath. I couldn't. My body gasped for air, and with it came ash that settled in my throat, on my tongue, in my nose. The ceiling was moving. It was as if someone on the other side was running their fingers across the plaster, trying to pry it open from the inside. A dry scratch pierced the silence, and then the shadow on the dark spot became clearer. At first, a blurry outline, then a long figure, broad-shouldered, disproportionate, as if it had been stretched at the edges. The creature's hands reached across the ceiling, scratching the surface, leaving dark, charred marks behind. I can hear you lying there, whisper voice. The spot on the ceiling trembled, and a piece of darkness slowly descended from it, like smoke hanging over a lamp, like soot sliding down a chimney. The shape became clearer. Now I could see a face, if you could call it that. A creature with burnt skin, ashy cracks all over its surface, and empty eyes, inside which something was moving. A miniature ashen whirlpool swirled in the cavities, as if it were made of the very ash that was falling down. Why are you lying here? He croaked with his silent, cracked lips. This is my place. I fall again, and no one reaches out their hands. His hand dropped. Long, skinny, bony. His fingers scattered, but immediately gathered back together, like ash flying up and falling again. He touched my forehead, and I felt a cold so deep that it was as if someone had poured a bucket of ice and darkness over me. The ash fell thicker. It fell from the monster's face, from his shoulders, from the cracks in his chest, covering my eyes, lips, and neck. Let me fall on you completely, he whispered, leaning over. Just once. I want to land at least once. And then he laid down on me with his whole body. Thick, cold ash covered my chest, squeezing it until it hurt. His weight was unexpectedly real. Not a shadow, not a spirit, but something heavy and charred that pressed on my ribs so that I couldn't even take a deep breath. It felt like I was drowning in dust, being buried under a thick layer of it, and that all this black mass was about to fall from the ceiling and bury me completely. He touched my lips with his own, crumbling ones. Ashes got into my mouth. I was suffocating. Don't move. I'm almost there. Almost. His empty eyes, filled with an ash-colored whirlwind, were only a few inches away. His fingers touched my neck. Then they slid down to my chest. The pressure increased. Air no longer entered my lungs. The ashes formed a layer on my face, covering everything. Let me in. It was no longer a whisper. It was a growl, wet and hoarse. I'm flying. I'm falling into you. And at that moment, I inhaled. I didn't control it. My body just jerked forward convulsively, painfully. The paralysis broke. I jumped up, sweeping the ashes from my face with my hands. And under my hands, nothing. Clean. The ceiling was white. The silence was even. No smoke. No ashes. The room was empty. Only on the blanket, where he had been sitting, was there a dark, still warm circle of ashes. I touched it with my finger, and it slowly crumbled, disappearing between my fingers. A dark palm print remained on the skin. Ashy, charred, unnaturally long, and it also crumbled, slowly, into the air. In the evening, I wanted only one thing: silence. Not special, not anxious, just ordinary, gentle silence in which I could finally breathe out. I turned off my phone, put it far away on the table, and sat down on the floor next to the bed. The darkness in the room was even and calm. A whitish light from a street lamp barely touched the room. The blanket, fresh from the dryer, was still warm and smelled clean. I sat like that for a long time, feeling my shoulders slowly drop, the noise of the day dissolving into the air. Then I slowly lay down on my side, covered myself, and felt. Sleep began to pull me down, smoothly, without resistance. And just before I finally fell asleep, the bed on my side bent slightly, as if someone had sat down, or lay down. I didn't open my eyes. I thought maybe the blanket had slipped, or maybe I had shuddered slightly. I allowed myself to relax. Silence, darkness, falling asleep, and with it, a sharp, heavy, complete paralysis. My eyes opened on their own. My body was stone. The room was the same, but the bed next to me was occupied. A shadow lay next to me, not a silhouette in the corner, not a figure by the door. It lay right there in the bed, on the blanket, facing me. Spilled darkness, a shape human-like, but without features. And the scariest thing, it was breathing, a barely noticeable rise and fall of the shadow's outline, as if there were lungs inside. I heard this breath so close, as if it were happening in my own ear. Quiet, even, but without any movement of air. And suddenly the shadow moved slowly, as if turning in its sleep. Its dark outline touched my shoulder. The darkness whispered, "You're lying in my place." The voice was flat, without intonation, empty, as if it came not from the throat, but from the darkness itself. I wanted to scream, I couldn't. I wanted to pull my hand away, I couldn't. The shadow moved again, creeping closer. Its body slid across the blanket, and I heard this sound, SHHH, as if something dry and lifeless was rubbing against the fabric. "I've always lain here," she whispered. "Always, even when you didn't know it. You took my place, slept on me, without feeling me." Her face was getting closer, a dark spot of darkness with no eyes, no mouth, just a deeper shadow. "Give it back. Pause. Give me back my bed." Something like a hand reached from her chest to my forearm. The fingers were thin, unnatural, but I felt a real, cold pressure. The cold entered my bones. It was as if I'd been touched by water in which old ice had been lying for a week. "I slept here with you many nights," she whispered. "You just didn't see me. And today you saw me, and you shouldn't have woken up." The shadow crept closer, its head almost touching mine. I smelled emptiness, a cold space where no one had lived for decades. "Sleep deeper," she said, running her fingers down my neck. "Deeper. I want to take your place. Your warmth, your breath, your side of the bed." Her hand slipped under my t-shirt. The ice moved to my chest. My breathing became ragged, but not because of fear. The shadow squeezed my lungs from the inside, squeezing the air out. The darkness covered my arm. My ribs crept up to my face. I'll lie down with you, and you go downstairs. Her voice was quiet like a thought. Under the bed, next to me, forever. Her outline rose to my chest, pressed, caught every hint of movement. Darkness crept into my mouth, to my nose, to my eyes. I couldn't breathe. Quieter. Don't move. I'm already on you. The shadow's fingers squeezed my neck. Not painfully, just right, precisely, the way they take your breath away. Just a little more, and I'll take your place. And in that second, when she almost covered my face, I gasped, roughly, with pain in my chest. The paralysis scattered. The paralysis scattered, as if I had been electrocuted. I jumped up, throwing myself away from the shadow, almost falling out of bed, gasping for air as if I had broken free from the depths of water. The room was silent. The darkness was motionless. But on the blanket on my side, there was a deep, clear dent, which slowly smoothed out, as if someone had just gotten up and disappeared into the darkness of the room. In the evening, I wandered around the apartment without any real purpose. I turned on a TV series, then turned it off. I put the kettle on, then forgot about it. I opened the window, breathed in the cold air, then immediately closed it. I wasn't bothered by fear or anxiety. There was just an unpleasant, nagging feeling inside me, as if I had been carrying around a thought all day that never quite took shape. As I walked past the front door, I heard a slight metallic sound. It was as if someone had run their hand along the banister on the stairs. This happens. The house is old, the acoustics are tricky. I bent down to put on my slippers, and that's when I smelled a faint scent of hot air. The kind you get near an oven that has just been turned off. The kind that comes from a candle that has just been extinguished. I touched the door with my palm. It was warm. Warm for just a second. After that, it cooled down so quickly that I thought I had imagined it. I went to the bedroom. I lay down. I exhaled. Sleep came smoothly, softly, like a blanket falling on my shoulders. And then my body shut down. Abruptly, completely. Paralysis fell on me like a cold stone. My eyes opened, and I immediately felt warmth. Not from the radiator, not from the blanket. The warmth was coming from the hallway. The light under the door was reddish, even pulsating, as if someone on the other side was holding a weak fire and it was flickering trying to get inside. Then I heard it. Shueshish, the faint crackling of dry wood in the flames. A sound you can't mistake for anything else. The heat touched the door, and at that moment, a voice rang out. Dry, hoarse, heavy like breathing through hot coals. Open. I couldn't even blink. Thin red streaks appeared under the door, spreading across the wood, as if someone were running their hot fingers across it from the other side. The wood crackled softly. It was feeling the heat. Almost a little closer. A shadow ran across the door. Not human. Pulsating, jagged, like a flame trying to take shape, but unable to decide what form to take. The temperature in the room slowly rose. At first, it was just warm. Then, burning air slid over my feet. It crept upward, slowly, as if looking for an entrance under the blanket. I could hear the fire breathing through the crack. Inhalation, a dry crackle. Exhale. When you sleep, whispered the voice from the other side. I watched. The flames touched the floor, and the wood under the door glowed translucently, like thin paper about to catch fire. Light seeped through the crack in long orange threads. One of them, alive, viscous like a tongue of fire, slowly crept inside. It touched the floor in my room. It bent, as if sniffing the air. Then it slid forward, as if checking to see if I was still there. When the heat touched my leg, I felt the air above my skin burn. The heat moved upward, to my knees, to my thighs. It seemed to be searching for a path through my body. "Wake up," a voice crackled, "and I'll come in." The flames burst out from under the door more strongly, as if someone had blown them out of the way. The wood began to darken. It seemed to me that the door was about to split in half, and at that moment, the heat crept closer to the bed. The fire was already touching the edge of the blanket. The blanket began to darken, and the air beneath it became dry and hot. I could no longer feel my own breath. It was as if the heat was pulling the air out of my lungs. The flames rose onto the bed, reaching my stomach, burning my chest with rays like from an oven with the door open. I felt the heat creeping up to my face, to my neck, to my lips. The fire breathed on my face. Hot, dry, smelling of something burnt old, like charred wood in an abandoned house. It was so close that if I could have raised my hand, I could have touched it. But I was stone, completely. The flames were already touching the edge of the pillow. Looking for my breath. Open. Inside. Almost. The ribbon of fire rose sharply and arched toward my face. And at that very moment, the paralysis broke. I inhaled so sharply that it hurt my chest. I leaned forward, threw off the blanket, and jumped out of bed. The hallway was dark. Completely. The door was cold. Completely. No heat. No light. But below, under the crack on the wood, there was a thin black charred mark. Straight. Even. As if a red-hot finger had actually touched the door. From the other side,